Hello, I'm Locke, Meredith. I'd like to ask you to join me on the next Legal Lines. We have tax attorney David Gunn. He's board certified. We're going to talk about two things that you can't avoid. That's taxes and death. David's going to talk to us about if you get a notice from the IRS, they want to audit you. And what do you do and what's the process? And do you necessarily have to pay what they tell you got to pay? He's also going to talk to us about wills and what do you have to think about and what do you have to do to make sure that what you have, you leave to who you want to get it. So join us on the next Legal Lines with David Gunn. Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and again have on the show David Gunn. David, again, thanks for being on. We're talking about two things you can't avoid, taxes and death, and how do you deal with it. We've talked about the IRS and the tax scenario, David, and you mentioned the Bill of Rights. Let's talk about the scenario where a taxpayer owes the tax, or the judge or whatever decides that it's due, and he can't pay it. Does the IRS, they're reasonable folks, they work with you, don't they?
They are generally very reasonable. And what a taxpayer in that situation should do is consider a couple of different avenues. One is to enter into an installment agreement where you say, look, I can't pay the entire amount now, but I can pay X number of dollars per month.
So it's almost like the IRS loans them the money in essence and they're paying back the loan.
You are financing your tax bill with the service, with the IRS, and it's important to understand that penalties and interest continue to accrue while you're doing that installment
agreement. So you
agreement.
pay it back as fast as you can.
Correct. The other main avenue is the offer in compromise, where you go to the IRS and you submit a bunch of documents which, if you prove to the IRS that you don't have the ability to pay, considering investments, cash, your equity in your home and things like that you may have, your vehicles, then they may compromise with you and accept a lesser amount. And there's a couple of different circumstances where that is authorized by the IRS.
Does bankruptcy protect you from an IRS
Well,
bill?
it can. It can. If your taxes are what we call old taxes, meaning more than 3 years old, a bankruptcy petition, specifically a Chapter 7 petition, will discharge those taxes.
And I guess that's the motivation for trying to not put you over the edge and negotiating with you.
That's correct.
For a compromised amount.
That's exactly right. But the offer in compromise, there's a lot of those sent in for valid reasons, Locke, and a lot of them are approved. One thing that people need to be careful of is there are, in the past, there have been people on TV that have been advertising to let us help you with the offer in compromise,
yeah.
And you can get out of your taxes by paying pennies on the dollar. And we got involved in some cases that they were involved in and talked with them, and they explained to us, well, pennies on the dollar may mean 99 pennies on the dollar.
Wow,
right.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah. And some people do a very good job with that. So I'm not at all suggesting that the offer in compromise is a bad thing. But you want to just be careful with the way you do that.
Let's switch gears.
Sure.
We've talked about taxes. Let's talk about death. Not a pleasant topic, but we're all going to die. And there are tax consequences to that. And there's also ways that you can plan, estate plan, to minimize tax consequences and make sure your property goes where you want it to go to. And who?
Correct.
To whom you want it to go to. So let's
Exactly.
talk about it.
Sure. We do a lot of estate planning work. People come in and draft their wills. And, they talk about in the will the family, their personal history, people to whom they've been married, and who they want to receive their property after they die. Now, after somebody drafts a will and then they do die, or if they die without a will, then people are very confused about what happens then. The process is referred to as probate. And probate has gotten a little bit of a bad name, undeservedly, in my opinion. The probate process ought to last 3 or 4 weeks for a straightforward succession or estate.
No hearings hardly required, no appearances by anybody other than the lawyer, maybe.
That's right. Should be over in about a month or less, and the fees should be extremely low. I mean, it's
Give
just...
an example. What's the typical fee for an easy probate?
$2,500.
Okay.
Sometimes $3,500 if it, got some complications to it, but I mean, it's just not brain surgery.
All right, let's define probate for them. We said a will is basically saying, telling folks after you die what to do with your property.
Correct.
Who to give it to and how to give it to them and all of that.
Right.
Probate is basically going to the court with that will if you have one, or if you don't have one, going to the court and saying, court, here's either what the will says do, or here's what the law says do.
Right. Put the children or put the wife in possession of the property and with the title, and that's what probate is.
You were talking during the break that there's some stuff you're hearing about seminars on probate and all that, and it's kind of not flying very well.
Well, what a lot of people are putting on seminars and writing books and making money doing that, and what they are selling is what's called a revocable trust or a living will, and that can be a good situation for the right person, like somebody possibly that's on their deathbed or whatever. But
what scenario, David, is it supposed to be addressing?
Well,
the living will.
They're trying to avoid the probate process, and they're paying $2,000 or $2,500 up front, way before they die, to avoid something that really shouldn't cost much more than that.
Money.
Right. And we've had to come in and clean up those things afterwards.
So they pay twice.
Well, they have had to. I mean, we try to be gentle with them with the fee, but you know, what some of the people tell them is that this is going to save you taxes, and it absolutely will not save any death tax.
And the concept in those things is basically transferring in advance of death?
Well, you put it into a trust so that when you die, then it's going to avoid probate, hopefully.
Because you don't own it, the trust owns it.
That's correct, and go in the direction that you want it to go in. But, you know, among other things, one of the pieces of information that those people are not informed of is that you have real estate in that trust. You're going to have to pay a lawyer to come in and transfer the real estate out of the trust and things like that. So the expenses can mount up.
David, let's tell folks what, because you and I have done this. You know, I know I'm going to die. I've got 4 kids, a wife, and I want to dot my I's and cross my T's. And I've come in and said, look, tell me what to do.
Right.
Tell the folks what guidance you give people when they come and talk to you.
Well, you just want to be careful, and you want to try to visualize most scenarios. What if you die first? What if your wife dies first? What if you've got a child that marries somebody that's maybe not financially responsible? Things like that. The other thing, Locke, is we review a lot of wills that people bring in and say, David, what do you think about this will? And we see people, for instance, try to dispose of their pension money and their life insurance money in the will.
Which is a wrong thing to do.
That's right. You don't do it that way. There's a beneficiary designation of the pension or of the life insurance.
Because if you do it through the will, it's taxed.
That's correct.
Whereas
well, it can be. It can be. That's right. The other thing that we urge people to think about is, you know, you really need to get a power of attorney and pick a trusted family member to take care of you if you're not able to do that for yourself. You and I have talked in the past, like we are very concerned. People are living so much longer now than they used to that their bodies, the expression that I use is their body is outliving their mind. I think the example that I gave you previously was in the year 1900, the average American female lived to the ripe old age of 47. And 100 years later, in the year 2000, I believe her life expectancy was 78.
Bottom line is, folks need to come, they need to anticipate this and deal with it in advance, and it can save their estate a lot of money.
Absolutely.
In addition to making sure what they want done is done right.
Correct.
David, thanks so much for being on the show. It's good to see you.
Thanks for having us.
It's Legal Lines with Locke, Meredith. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time.